بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه وبعد فالليل ليلة الثامنة من شهر صفر لعام 35 و400 وألف من الهجرة. Tonight being the night before Wednesday, the 8th night of Safar in the year 1435 of the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And today inshallah we'll continue with our classes in Daleel at-Taalib li-Nail al-Matalib. Daleel at-Taalib li-Nail al-Matalib li Shaykh Muhammad Ahmed BaaJabir. And before we continue, we just want to recap what we went over in the last lesson. So in the last lesson, we talked about fiqh. Right? This lesson, for those of you who this might be their first time, this lesson is in the book Daleel at-Taalib li-Nail al-Matalib. Daleel at-Taalib li-Nail al-Matalib, which is a book in Islamic law based on the Hanbali school of thought. And in the last class, we talked about the definition of fiqh. The definition of what is fiqh. And we said that fiqh is ma'rifatul ahkam al-shar'iyya al-amaliyya bi-adillatiha al-tafsiliyya. To be aware of the religious rulings as they relate to our actions with their specific evidences. And awareness of the religious rulings as they relate to our actions with their specific evidences. And we started with the issue of tahara. The first section in this book was the book of tahara. And we said that the word tahara in the religion or in the language, it means nadafa, to be pure or to be clean. This is what tahara means in the language. But in the religion, when we use the word tahara, it means one of three things. We said it can mean raf al-hadith. We said it can mean ma fi ma'na. And we said it can mean izalat al-khabath or zawal al-khabath. Raf al-hadith wa ma fi ma'nahu wa zawal al-khabath. The purposeful removing of hadith. Things, the purposeful removal of things similar or actions that are similar to the purposeful removal of hadith and the going away of najasa, then this is what tahara is in the religion. The purposeful removal of hadith. Like to make wudu or to take a ghusl after one used the restroom or had relationships with their wife or husband, then this is raf al-hadith, the removal or the purposeful removal of hadith. Hadith, we said, was a condition that occurs in the person's body that stops him from being able to pray. Anytime you do something that once you do it, you can't pray, then you're in a state of hadith. So if you pass gas, can you pray after that? We say la, because you're in a state of hadith. This condition means you can't pray until you do what? Until you make tahara. Until you do something that removes this condition off of your body. So if a person uses the restroom, he can't pray until when? He can't pray until he makes wudu. Right? So this wudu is tahara. Because it's the raf al-hadith. It's the removal of that hadith. Likewise, if a person has intercourse with their spouse, they can't pray afterwards until they do what? Until they take a ghusl. Why? Because after intercourse they were in a state of hadith. They were in a condition that stopped them from being able to pray. And they can't pray until they make tahara. And tahara in this situation is a ghusl, because a ghusl is how you remove the hadith after intercourse. A woman who's on her period, she can't pray. And when she's off of her period, she can't pray until she does what? Until she makes a ghusl, because the period is a hadith. It's something that stops you from being able to pray. That's what the word hadith means. And once she takes a ghusl, then this is tahara. Because when she takes a ghusl, she's removed that hadith. So when we say tahara, tahara is the purposeful removal of hadith. When you make a ghusl, or you take wudu, or you make tayammum, then this is tahara. Also from tahara we said ma fi ma'na, things similar to the removal of hadith. Like for instance, on the school of thought, the author mentioned making tayammum. And he also mentioned renewing your wudu. When you make another wudu after you already have wudu, you're not getting rid of any hadith because you were already able to pray. But when you make wudu a second time after already having wudu or renewing your wudu, then this is tahara, from the aspect of ma fi ma'na, actions similar to the raf of the hadith. And the last aspect of tahara is the removal of najasa, the going away of najasa. So if your clothing gets urine on it, then this urine is najis. And you need to make tahara. And tahara is the removal of that najasa by using water or using dirt or chemicals or something to get rid of the essence of that item. So this is what we talked about last class. At-Tahara huwa raf'ul hadith wa ma fi ma'nahu wa zawal al-khabath. Purification in Islam is the purposeful removal of hadith. Things similar to the purposeful removal of hadith and the getting rid of najasa. This is tahara in Islam. So we'll stop at that amount and then we'll let the Shaykh pick back up from where he was at. Are you brothers too hot? Is it too hot for you? Huh?
طهارة أم ليس طهارة؟ وهذه القاعدة هذه القسمة الأولى، طهارة أم لا؟ زوال الخبث، زوال الخبث يعني زوال النجاسات. زوال النجاسات، كيف تزول النجاسات؟ لها صور. غسلها بالماء، المصنف سار على هذه الطريقة فقال أحدها طهور، هذا إيش؟ الاسم طريقة.
وهو الباقي
هو إزالة نجاسة، هو غسل ميت. قال المصنف عليه رحمة هذا من زوال الخبث. إذن الطهارة رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث، هذا هو تعريف الطهارة. بماذا تكون الطهارة؟
Jay, the Shaykh Hafidhullah, after explaining what is tahara, he explained to us that tahara is raf'ul hadith wa ma fi ma'nahu وَزَوَالْ الْخَبَثِ, the removal of hadith, things similar to that, and the going away of najasa. After explaining that, he says, so how does one make tahara? What does one need to make tahara? What item does one need to make tahara?
التي تستعمل في الطهارة ما هي الوسائل؟ لو تمعنا سنقول وضوء وغسل. ليش يكون الوضوء والغسل؟ بالماء.
Jay, he said, what are the means that one is able to perform tahara with? And what is the manifestation of tahara in itself? He said, if we were to consider what is this tahara, we would see that it's either wudu or ghusl. It's either making wudu or taking a ghusl or washing things off, right? So how do we make wudu and ghusl? What do we need? We need water. Right? We need water.
وسيلة من وسائل الطهارة. وهذا الماء يستعمل في أي أنواع الطهارة؟ في رفع الحدث؟ نعم ولا لا؟ نعم. وفي زوال الخبث، في غسل النجاسات. طيب، وما في معناه كذلك.
نعم. He said, so water is the medium or the means that we can use to make purification. Water is the medium or the means that we can use to make purification. In what aspect of tahara can we use water? Remember we said tahara is three things. رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث. The purposeful removal of hadath. Can we use water to get rid of hadath? The answer is yes. Right? Jay, what about using water to get rid of najasa? Can we use water to get rid of najasa? The answer once again is yes. What about things similar to the removal of hadath? Can we use water in those things? Once again, the answer is yes. So water can be used in every aspect of tahara.
تعمل في جميع أنواع الطهارة، أليس كذلك؟ طيب، من الوسائل التي تستعمل في الطهارة أيضا التراب، والتراب يستعمل في أي أنواع الطهارة؟ في التيمم، وهو ما في معنى رفع الحدث. من الوسائل المستعملة أيضا ماذا؟
He says also from the things that we can use in the removal, in the carrying out of the performance of tahara is what else? We can use water to make tahara. What else can we use to make tahara? We can use dirt or earth. How can we use earth to make tahara? What way can we use earth to make tahara? We can use the earth to make tahara through tayammum. By making tayammum, we're making tahara from the aspects of the things similar to the raf of the hadath. So we have water, we have dirt. What other things can we use to make tahara? What other mediums or means do we have that we can use to make tahara?
والحجر يستعمل في الاستجمار.
He says also from the things that we can use to make tahara are ahjar, stones. How do we use stones to make tahara? In what form do we use stones to make tahara? We use stones to make tahara in al-istijmar, or the cleaning of ourselves after using the restroom. Right? When we use the restroom, we can use stones to clean ourselves. Right? This is called istijmar, and this is tahara, from the aspect of the removal of najasa. So all of these mediums can be used in tahara.
يستعمل في أي أنواع الطهارة؟ في إزالة الخبث، لكن لا يستعمل في رفع الحدث، لا يرفع به الحدث. إذن يستعمل في زوال الخبث. وبقي أمر رابع، وسيلة رابعة تستعمل في الطهارة، وهي الدابغ، دبغ الجلود.
Now, so he says, so the stones, they can be used in the izala of khabath, or the removal of najasa, right? But they can't be used in the removal of hadath, on the school of thought. He says also there's one more thing that we can use to perform tahara. There's one more thing that we can use to perform tahara, and that is called dabigh, tanning. When you take the skin of an animal and you let it dry out in the sun with lotus water and things like that, that's called tanning. This is a form of purification. Right? This is a form of tahara. Because we said tahara is raful hadith, wa ma fi ma'nahu, wa zawal al-khabath. The purposeful removal of hadith, things similar to that, and the removal of najasa. What are the things that we can use to perform tahara? We can use water in all of the aspects. Raf'ul hadith, wa ma fi ma'nahu, wa zawal al-khabath. We can use we can use dirt, right? In tayammum, which is ma fi ma'nahu on the school of thought, and the things that are similar to the raf of hadith. We can use stones, right? We use stones in istijmar, which is the removal of najasa. And we can also use a dabigh, or tanning. Fadl. للنظافة بعد استخدام الحمام؟ نعم يجوز. جيد. إذا أنت في الصحراء أو مثلا ما في عندك موية وتريد التيمم، نعم، فإن لم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا سعيدا طيب، هذا حكم من الله. وهو سيجيب كل هذه الأسئلة، ولكن يحتاج منا ماذا؟ يحتاج منا المواظبة والصبر مع الدرس. ما في مشكلة بالسؤال أبدا، اسألوا، ولكن أطلب منكم أن يعني تصبروا وتراجعوا الدروس من بدايتها إلى آخرها، لأن هذا هو الغرض من الدروس، أن تعرفوا هذه الأمور. So that's the intent, that we learn these things from beginning to end, right? We said that fiqh is that we know معرفة الأحكام العملية الشرعية بأدلتها التفصيلية, to know the religious verdicts about our actions. We all do actions. We need to know what the religion says about these actions. So this class is going to teach us all of those questions. If I'm in the desert, if I'm in the masjid, if I'm here, if I'm there, what do I do? How do I do it? Right? It's going to teach us all of that, but it's going to take us learning step by step. Right? The author, rahimahullah, he started with the book of Tahara because that's the first question everybody needs to ask. How do I purify myself? Right? So we know what is Tahara. At-Tahara lughatan an-nadhafa. Tahara, in the language, it means purity. Right? In the religion, it means رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث. The removal of hadith, or the purposeful removal of hadith, things similar to it, and the getting or the doing away of najasa. Right? Does everybody understand that? These are the type of questions that we encourage or that we really want in the class. هل تفهمون هذه العبارات؟ لأن التعلم يكون يعني سلم، تبدأ من أسفل شيء ثم تصعد. فيعني المهم أن نركز على هذه العبارات حتى تكون واضحة. رفع الحدث. What does it mean to رفع الحدث? What does that mean? Is that واضح? You understand what it means to remove حدث? Right? حدث هو وصف قائم بالبدن تمنع من الصلاة ونحوها. الحدث is a condition in the body that stops you from praying. Passing gas, using the restroom, right? Having intercourse, ejaculation, being on the period or after birth, right? Losing consciousness. All of these things put you in a condition that once you do them, you can't pray until you do what? Until you make tahara. Because tahara is raf al-hadath, the purposeful removal of that condition. Also from tahara is ma fi ma'nahu, things similar to the removal of hadath. Ma ma'na hadha al-kalam? What does this mean? This means that actions that don't remove a hadath but are similar. For example, tajdeed al-wudu. If I already have wudu and I make another one, am I removing a hadath? We say la, because I'm already in a state of tahara. So there's no hadath to remove. But if I remake my wudu, this is still tahara because it's similar to the raf of the hadath. Likewise, washing my hands 3 times after I wake up in the morning, before I put them into the container to make wudu. When I wash my hands 3 times, is this a removal of the hadath? We say la, because just because I wash my hands, I can't make salat yet, but it's something similar to the removal of hadath. Right, so this is also tahara. Also from tahara is zawal al-khabath, or najasa, the going away of najasa. Right? If I get urine on my throat, this is najis. Tahara would be to get rid of that urine. So this is tahara. Raf'ul hadath wa ma fi ma'nahu wa zawal al-khabath. The removal of hadath, things similar to it, and the going away of najasa. إذا كان هذا هو الطهارة, if this is what purity is or tahara is, then what can I use to make tahara? Right? When we look at the different things that are tahara, how do I make it? We use water. هذا من وسائل الطهارة. Also, at-Turab من وسائل الطهارة من التيمم. Al-Ahjar, right? Stone. We use this in tahara, right? Also, at-Dabir, tanning, or when you tan the skin of an animal, like a cow, when we turn it into leather, this is called dabr, right? So these are from the things that we can use in tahara. The author, he doesn't mention a lot of stuff. Hand sanitizer, right? Is that a form of tahara? Yes. If I have something najis on my hand and I use hand sanitizer, that's from izalatul khabath. Can I make wudu with hand sanitizer? You say la. Right? Because raf al-hadith, the only thing I can use is water. Right? What about scraping my shoes on the ground before I enter the masjid? Is that tahara? We say yes. Right? From what aspect? Izalatul khabath. From the removal of najasa. Because the Prophet told us before we go into the masjid, check your shoes, and if there's something nasty on them, then wipe them off. Right? And this is purity for them. So this is what we want to understand. At-tahara, raf al-hadith, wa ma fi ma'nahu, wa zawal al-khabath. وسائلها التي ذكرها الشارع الماء والتراب والأحجار والدبغ. Water, dirt, stones, and tanning. Tanning is what we use the sun to turn the skin into leather. We'll pick back up with the Shaykh now.
يطهرها أم لا يطهرها؟ خلاف بين أهل العلم، وإنما ذكرتها لأنه هو قول في المذهب.
نعم. So the Shaykh Habibullah says, so the tanning of animal hide, right? When we try to take the animal skin and turn it into leather, does this purify it or not? He says there's a difference of agreement amongst the scholars, but the reason I mentioned it is because it's a very strong opinion that it does purify it. Taking animal skin and letting it dry out in the sun with lotus and water and things like that purifies the animal skin.
أنه لا يطهرها لكنه يخفف نجاستها، وعلى القول الثاني أنه يطهرها. فعلى القول الثاني الدابغ يعتبر وسيلة من وسائل الطهارة. اتضح الأمر أم لا؟
So he says, and then on the other opinion, they say it doesn't actually purify the skin. It only lessens its najasa. But on the second opinion, we say it purifies the skin. In any situation, the question is it clear to you or not what we're talking about? Is the affair of the things that we can use to make purification, are they clear? What are the things we can use to make purification? Water. What kind of purification can we make with it? Remember, we said purification is three types. Raf al-hadith, wa ma fi ma'nahu, wa zawal al-khabath. What kind of purification can we make with water? All three. I can make wudu with water. I can wash my hands with water. I can wash my clothes with water. What else can we use? Dirt, turab. غسل الميت من الطهارة ولكن هو بالماء. ما في معنى رفع الحدث. Right? We can use turab. We can use dirt to make tahara. What kind of way can I use dirt to make tahara? Tayammum, right? And on this school of thought, tayammum are things similar to the raf of the hadith. What about stones? How can I use stones to make tahara? Istijmar, right? Which is izala and najasa. And what about dabr? How can I use dabr to make tahara or tanning? How can I make tahara with that? Right? You understand what tanning is? Like if I see a deer on the highway, right? We all drove down the highway and we see a dead deer on the side of the highway. That deer is what? It's najis, right? Nobody slaughtered it. That deer is najis. Everything about it. But if I was to take that deer and skin it and let its skin dry in the sun until it turned into leather, and then I made like a sack or a bag from it, right? That's called dabr. Right? Before, we didn't have plastic. We didn't have water bottles, right? What do we used to make our water containers from? Jalud, mumtaz. We used to make them from animal skin. So how do we get the animal skin clean in order to put water in it? We would dry it out in the sun, right? That's called dabr. Right? So these are from the ways that we can make tahara.
هنا الأصل الذي سنسير عليه أننا نفك العبارة ونصور المسألة ونذكر الدليل أو التعليل، لكن ما نخوض في الخلاف. لكني أنا متأكد أني أحيانا سأساق إلى الخلاف يعني بدون إيش خروجا على القاعدة، فإن خرجت فردوني.
The Shaykh Hafizahullah here, he wants to draw attention to the fact that he mentioned dabr, although they disagree about it. And he said that from the principles that he's going to follow in this lesson is that he's only going to explain the author's statements. The book is Daleel at-Taalib. He's only going to explain the author's statements. And he's going to mention the evidence that supports the author's statements, whether it be the Quran and the Sunnah, Daleel, or it be Ta'leel, the justification and reasoning. And he's not going to get into the difference of opinion. Right? And he said every once in a while he might end up falling into the difference of opinion, but he'll try to keep it on this principle. I.e., he's not going to talk about the difference of opinion. And the point behind all of this, like we said, is that there are a lot of things that a person might learn that are incorrect. Some of the things in this book are overturned opinions. There are opinions that other scholars have come and said later, no, they're wrong. Right? Like tayammum. The book says that tayammum is only from the thing, it can't remove hadath. We say no, tayammum gets rid of hadath. Right? Allah said, وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا. فَتَيَمَّمُوا سَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. Right? وَمَا يُرِيدُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْ حَرَجٍ. Right? Allah doesn't want to put you in hardship, but He wants to purify you with it. Right? The point of it all is that there are going to be things that are disagreed about, but he's not going to teach us the disagreement right now. All he's going to teach us is what's in this book, so that way once we understand this book and the evidence in this book, after that we can go to the next book. And in the next book we can get the disagreement. And then in the next book we can get even more disagreement, and we'll learn step by step. So if you hear something that is against what you were taught or that you think is incorrect, there's no problem to ask somebody that has knowledge, how should I act in this issue. But our goal here is to learn the book, that way in order we can have a stepping stone to grow in our knowledge.
قال المصنف عليه رحمة الله في تعريف الطهارة: هي رفع الحدث وزوال الخبث. ترك شيئا؟ ترك ما في معناه اختصارا، ما ذكر ما في معناه. طيب تقرأ علينا شيء؟ أنا أريد.
Okay, so here he just summarized it all again. He said, so the author, and Imaam ibn Yusuf, he said in his book, Daleel at-Taalib, at-Tahara, Raf al-Hadith, wa ma fi ma'na. Did the author leave anything out? We say yes. The author left out things similar to the removal of hadith. So once again, one more time, at-Tahara, huwa Raf al-Hadith, wa ma fi ma'nahu, wa zawal al-Khabath. The purposeful removal of hadith, things similar to that, and the going away of najasa.
أقرأ وأعلق على.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله: كتاب الطهارة، وهي رفع الحدث وزوال الخبث وأقسام الماء ثلاث.
Now, so the reader, he went on to read that Mar'i ibn Yusuf, he said that book about Sahaba, chapter about Sahaba, and it is the purposeful removal of hadith and things similar to that. Mar'i ibn Yusuf went on to say, water is 3 categories. There are 3 categories of water. Water is 3 categories.
الطهارة هي رفع الحدث وزوال الخبث. السؤال: ما هو الدليل على هذا؟ ما في دليل يقول الطهارة هي رفع الحدث وزوال الخبث، لكن هذا عرف بالاستقراء، لأن هذا اصطلاح سميت بالطهارة ثم بحث ما هي الأنواع الطهارة التي جاء بها الشرع، فبالبحث والاستقراء والتتبع وجدوا أن ما أمر به الشارع من طهارات هو وضوء، هو غسل، هو تيمم، هو إزالة نجاسة، هو غسل ميت. فبدأ هذا التصنيف، يعني هذا تصنيف وتقسيم اصطلاحي.
نعم. The Shaykh Hafizahullah, he said, Jay, so we understand that tahara is the raf al-hadath, the purposeful removal of hadath, things similar to that, and the going away of najasa. The next question we ask ourselves is, what's the evidence? What's the daleel that this is what tahara is? He says there's no daleel, i.e. from like the book or the sunnah directly saying that that purification is these three things. Instead, the evidence about this is from tatabbu' wal-istiqra', from research and gathering up all of the issues. So when we research and we look at the Quran and the Sunnah and we gather up all the aspects of purification, we see that purification is either wudu or ghusl or tayammum or washing the dead body, ghusl al-mayt, right? And izalat al-najasa. We find all of its categories, all of its classifications, and when we look at it, they all fall into these three categories. So this is the evidence. This is the daleel that purification is three things. Raf al-hadath, wa ma fi ma'nahu, wa zawal al-qadr. Is the evidence for that the Quran and the Sunnah? Allah said that purification is three things. We say la. Is the evidence for that the Sunnah? This is my statement to you to explain. Is the evidence from that the Sunnah? That the Prophet said that the tahara, thalatha? We say la. The evidence for this is at-Taalib wa istiqra', research and gathering of the issue. When we research this issue, we find that this is purification. This is the terminology that we use to classify what this is, based on the research of all the different aspects.
أكمل. قال وأقسام المياه ثلاثة. انتقل المصنف الآن بعد أن عرف الطهارة إلى أقسام المياه، إلى بيان أقسام المياه. لماذا انتقل المصنف وشرع بعد الكلام عن الطهارة إلى أنواع المياه والكلام عن المياه؟ لأن
The question is, he says, so after the author says that, he says, water is three categories. Why did the author, after talking about tahara, talk about the different types of water? Why do you think the author did that? Why did the author, لماذا قال المصنف كما سمعتم, right? Why did the author, after mentioning purification, talk about the types of water? What's the answer? Who thinks they know the answer? Jay, we'll see what the Shaykh says.
كما ذكرنا قبل قليل من أهم الوسائل التي تستعمل في ماذا؟ في الطهارة.
He says the answer is like we said just a second ago. That water is from the most important of mediums or things that we use in making tahara. The most important thing that we can use in making tahara is what? It's ma. So therefore, after talking about what is tahara, the next logical step is to talk about the most important thing that we can use in making tahara. This is why the first thing they talk about is the issue of water.
الماء والتراب والحجر. أي هذه والدابة، أي هذه الأربعة أكثرها عموما في الطهارة؟ الماء، لأنه يدخل في كل أنواع الطهارة.
Jay. So he says the things that we can use to make purification or tahara are four. What are they? Al-ma, wal-turab, wal-hajar, wal-dabq. Water, dirt, stones, and tanning. Which of these are the most beneficial in making purification and can be used in every aspect of making purification? Of course, it's water. This is why he mentioned water after talking about tahara.
لا يدخل فيها كلها والحجر لا يدخل فيها كلها، أليس كذلك؟ قال أنواع وأقسام المياه ثلاثة. طيب كلكم يعرف أن أقسام المياه ثلاثة: الطهور والطاهر والنجس.
He said, so all of the other types of things that we can use in purification can't be used in every aspect, but water can be used in every aspect. So that's why he said the types of water are three. All of you probably already know that there are three types of water, right? We have tahur, tahir, and najis, right? We have tahur, tahir, and najis. These are the three types of water. And the author, and likewise the explainer, are going to go into details about these three. We'll try to finish tahur today?
عليه رحمة الله سيبين أن الطهور ينقسم إلى أقسام أيضا. اقرأ علينا.
So he says, so we all know these three types of water: tahur, tahir, and najis. He said the author is going to clarify for us that even these categories break up into other categories. So tahur has other categories under it. It's not just one thing. So let's hear what the author has to say about water that is tahur.
أقسام الماء ثلاثة أحدها طهور وهو الباقي على خلقته.
نعم، قال أحدها طهور. كلمة طهور هذا بيان تعريف له ولا بيان لاسمه؟ بيان الاسم الآن. الأول القسم الأول من أقسام المياه ما اسمه؟ الطهور.
So he says, the author says the types of water are three. One of them, or the first of them, is tahur. Shaykh BaaJabir, he says, Jade. So tahur, right? The word tahur in Arabic is from the same origin as tahir, right? To be pure, right? So he says this word tahur, is it the name of this category of water, or is it the ruling about this category of water? Are we saying that the word tahur, is it its name, or is it the description of this water? We say the answer is the answer is that tahur is the name of this type of water, not the description. Right? Tahur is the name of this type of water and not its description. Its description is something else. But the name of the first category of water is tahur.
وهو الباقي على خلقته. هذه الجملة ما هي؟ تعريف للطهور، حد للطهور، تعريف للطهور، بيان للطهور.
Now, he says, then the author says, and it is the type of water that remains the same way it was created. أحدها طهور وهو الباقي على خلقته. The first type of water is tahur, and it is the type of water that is the same way that it was created. Al-Baqi ala khilqati. It hasn't changed. It's the same way as it was created. Right? This sentence is an explanation or the definition of what is tahur water. If somebody asks you what water is tahur, you say it's the water al-ma al-baqi ala khilqati. It's the water that is the same way that it was created. It's the same way that it was created. That's its definition. So its name is tahur. Its definition is al-baqi ala khilqati. The water that remains the same way that it was created.
tahur al-baqi ala khilqati. تبين باقي شيء ثالث وهو الحكم. وهذه القاعدة التي ذكرها وسأعيدها الآن وأشرحها تمر معنا في جميع أنواع المياه، وينبغي على كل إنسان أن يعرف المياه بهذه الطريقة، لأنني متأكد أنه أكثركم يعرف الطهور والطاهر والنجس. فإذا قيل ما هو الطهور قال إيش؟ لا أنت تعرف إيش تعرف الطهور؟
He says, pay attention. Right? We got the first two things. The ism is tahur. The definition is al-baqi ala khilqati. Right? And he says there's a third thing. And you need to pay attention to this because this type of principle will continue with us in every category of water. Right? These three things that we're going to mention. The name, the definition, and this third thing that he hasn't mentioned yet. And he says the reason why we need to pay attention to this is because I think that most of you, if I ask you, what is tahur water? What would your answer be? Like, what is like explain to me what is tahur water? What is its definition? What would you say? Huh? Antum ta'allamtu, right? You all just learned that, so that's good. Let's see what the students at that class said.
في نفسه المطهر الغير هذا اللي يخطر على البال.
He said that most of the people, when they ask what is tahur water, they say it's the water that is pure in itself and purifying to something else. هو طاهر في نفسه المطهر لغيره. Right? When you ask them what is tahur water, this is what they say. Right? But this is not its definition. This is not its definition.
والآن غيروا هذه الطريقة. المطلوب في كل نوع من أنواع المياه أن تعرف ثلاثة أشياء. اسم النوع هذا واحد، تعريفه هذا الثاني، حكمه هذا الثالث. المصنف سار على هذه الطريقة فقال أحدها طهور، هذا إيش؟ الاسم. وهو الباقي على خلقته، هذا ماذا؟ هذا تعريفه. بهذه العبارة تستطيع أن تميز بين أنواع المياه. فكلما جاءك ماء تنظر فيه وتتأمل هل هو باق على خلقته أم لا. فإن كان باق على خلقته فهو طهور، وإن كان ما هو باق على خلقته فليس بطهور، سيكون أحد النوعين الباقيين. طيب، ثم انتقل إلى الحكم فقال تفضل.
يرفع الحدث ويزيل الخبث.
هذا هو الحكم.
نعم. جيد. So he says, so this is what most people would say, but now I want you all to change the way that you've been doing. I want you to pay attention to these three things in every aspect of what we're going to talk about in the different types of water. Because this is what the author also traversed in this fashion. Right? He mentions three things: the name, the definition, and what it does, or the ruling about it. What is it good for? Al-hukm, al-ism, wal-ta'rif, wal-hukm. So the author said, ahaduha at-tahur. What is tahur? It's the name. Right? One of the types of water is tahur. Tahur is its name. وَهُوَ الْبَاقِي عَلَى خِلْقَتِهِ. And it's the type of water that's the same way that it was created. This is what? This is its definition. I.e., when you know this definition, you're able to distinguish between the different types of water. So if you see some water that's the same way it was created, you say it's what? It's tahur. And if you see some water that's not the same way it was created, you say it's from one of the two other types of water. Right? I want to set some examples so that's clear. Ocean water. Is that tahur? Why not? He says no. Why not? Who put the salt in it? Allah, right? So it's the same way it was created, right? It's al-baqi ala khilqat. It got salt in it. Who put the salt there? Allah did. So it's the same way it was created. A cup of water that I add some table salt in, according to the school of thought, is that tahur? Why not? It's not the same way it was created. I changed it, right? So this is what we mean when we say it's on the same way it was created, right? Snow, is that tahur? It's the same way it was created, right? Even if it has, a little bit of this or a little bit of that in it, it's the same way Allah created it, right? But something that I changed or added something to, then we say that no, it's not tahur. And we're going to talk more about this because this is an important issue. So that's its definition. It's al-ma al-baqi ala khilqati. Right? The water that's the same way it was created. When I turn on the sink, right? Is that water the same way it was created? Yeah, for the most part, right? It's the same way, right? This is where we're going to get into issues about what if they add a little something or take a little something out and they put fluoride in the water. The point is that the water, when I turn on my sink, it's the same way it was created, right? It's not blue, it's not green, it's not pink, right? It's like I took it out the ocean, out the stream directly, right? So it's al-baqi ala khilqati. He's going to talk about certain changes that do affect or don't affect. I'm going to say to you now, just for the sake that it's important to understand this, and I usually don't want to do this, but this is an important issue, there's only two types of water. Water is either tahur or najis. There's no such thing as tahir. This opinion is overturned. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Inna al-ma'a at-tahur la yunajjisuhu shay." Water, all water is tahur, nothing makes it najis. Right? This hadith is authentic. So therefore we say all water is tahur, and the only water that's not tahur is najis. But a lot of the scholars say that water is three types. So we need to know, what are the three types? Tahur, tahir, and najis. What's the first one called? Tahur. What's its definition? Al-baqi ala khilqati. Right, if you say water is three types, the definition of tahur is that it's al-baqi ala khilqati. The third thing that he mentions, going back to his statements, is what does it do? Or its ruling, its hukm. Right, he says, يَرْفَعُ الْحَدَثِ وَيَزِيلُ الْخَبَثِ. Right, it can remove the hadith and get rid of najasa. That's what this water does. It's pure in itself and it purifies other things. يَرْفَعُ الْحَدَثِ وَيَزِيلُ الْخَبَثِ. Right? So, the name of it is tahur. Its definition is al-baqi ala khilqatihi. What does it do? Or what's its hukm? يَرْفَعُ الْحَدَثِ وَيَزِيلُ الْخَبَثِ.
حدث ويزيل الخبث. مر معنا رفع الحدث وزال الخبث والفرق بينها مر معنا. إذن يرفع الحدث ويزيل الخبث، هذا هو الحكم، وهنا لنا وقفة الآن. إذن الطهور ما هو؟ النوع الأول ما هو؟ الطهور. ما هو تعريفه؟ الباقي على خلقته. ما هو حكمه؟ يرفع الحدث ويزيل الخبث. إذا قلنا يرفع الحدث معناه يستعمل في الوضوء ويستعمل في الغسل. الجواب نعم ولا لا؟ نعم. يرفع الحدث. يزيل الخبث معناه يستعمل في الاستنجاء، يستعمل في إزالة، في غسل النجاسات التي على البدن، وهكذا. هذا معناه. نريد أن نقف عند قوله وهو الباقي على خلقته.
Before we go in, we'll stop at that next statement when he finishes that. So here, he recaps it all for us once again. Right? We see that the lessons, we only get maybe one or two lines. But the point is that when we finish the lesson, we should know these one or two lines. Right? So he says that what does this water do? يَرْفَعُ الْحَدَثِ وَيَزِيلُ الْخَبَثِ. He says we already talked about the difference of رَفْعُ الْحَدَثِ وَإِزَالَةُ الْخَبَثِ. Do we all know the difference between the two? رَفْعُ الْحَدَثِ is what? Making wudu, making ghusl, right? What about إِزَالَةُ الْخَبَثِ or زَوَالُ الْخَبَثِ? What's that? Istijmar, istinja, right? Ghusl al-thawb. All of these things are زَوَالُ الْخَبَثِ. So he says that this water can be used in رَفْعُ الْحَدَثِ وَإِزَالَةِ الْخَبَثِ or زَوَالُ الْخَبَثِ, right? That's what this water does. So now recap, the first category of water is what? What's its name? Tahur. What's its definition? Al-baqi ala khilqatihi. What's its ruling? What does it do? Mumtaz. يَرْفَعُ الْحَدَثِ وَيَزِيلُ الْخَبَثِ. Right? And what's tahara one more time? Since we're going back, tahara is رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث. We say zawal and not izala because izala means you had to do something. Zawal means if it goes away by itself, it's gone. So if somebody pees outside and then the sun dries it up, did I do anything? But is the ground najis? We say no, the ground's clean then, because the sun took it away without me doing anything. That's why we say zawal al-khabath and not izala. Right? So at-tahara, رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث. المياه ثلاث. The first one is tahur, وهو الباقي على خلقته. يرفع الحدث ويزيل الخبث. Right? I.e. can be used in all aspects of tahara. The last thing he says is that we want to stop, the last thing he'll say for us today is that we want to take a small pause with the statement وهو الباقي على خلقته. Right? Like we said, it's the water that hasn't changed. But when I asked you, does the water that come out your sink, has it changed? What was your answer? You said a little bit. You know, they put this in the Mississippi, then it comes out, and then they put it through the treatment plant. Right? So it's not the same way, right? So, is it tahir or not? Is it tahur or not? Right? This is what the author or the explainer is going to get into right now.
عندما قال المصنف وهو الباقي على خلقته، حبذا لو تضيف عند هذه الكلمة عند كلمة على خلقته اكتب عندها حقيقة أو حكما.
He says, so when the author says the statement, وهو الباقي على خلقته, I want you all to add the phrase حكما, right? أو حقيقة أو حكما. حقيقة أو حكما. i.e. and it is the water that is the same way that it was created. حقيقة, i.e. in reality, or حكما, in the judgment that we give it. Right? حقيقة, it's the same exact way that Allah created. No change. حكما, a change that we say it doesn't matter. Right? So add that phrase. الماء الطهور, what is it? هو الباقي على خلقته حقيقة أو حكما.
حقيقة أو حكما. ما معنى حقيقة؟ باقي على خلقته حقيقة. إيش يعني؟ باقي على خلقته حقيقة يعني ما أصابه تغير، هذه خلقته التي خلق عليها، هذا معنى باقي على خلقته حقيقة. فالماء هذا الذي من المطر أو من الآبار باقي على خلقته، وماء البحر باقي على خلقته، وهكذا. ولو كان ماء البئر مالح هذه خلقته أم لا؟ يصح ويصدق أن نقول عنه أنه طهور باق على خلقته حقيقة؟ نعم.
He says, so therefore when we say it's the water that remains the same way it was created, حقيقة, in reality. What does that statement mean? It means it's the water that's the same way that it was created and no change has occurred. It hasn't changed in any shape, form, or fashion. Whether rainwater, water out of the wells, all of this water is the same way that it was created. No change occurred. Right? So for instance, if we had a well water that was a little bit salty, has this water changed from the way it was created? No, it came out the well that way. It's the exact same way it was created, even though it's a little bit salty. So this is al-ma' al-baqi ala khilqatihi haqiqatan. This water is tahur because it's baqi ala khilqati. It's in the same way that it was created in reality. No change has taken place. This is what it means in reality. So like we said, seawater, seawater, rainwater, snow, thels, water out of a spring, right, a geyser, all of these things are baqi ala khilqatihi haqiqatan. They haven't changed whatsoever, right?
باقي على خلقته حقيقة. وقد يكون باقي على خلقته حكما. ما معنى باقي على خلقته حكما؟ يعني أنه أصابه تغير لكن هذا التغير لم يخرجه من الطهور إلى الطاهر.
He says, and then you could possibly have some water that's baqi ala khilqatihi hukman. It's the same way it was created in the judgment we give it. What does this mean? It has the same ruling or the same judgment as water that's the same way it was created. Meaning that some change might have occurred, but this change doesn't remove it from being tahur. Some change occurred, but this change isn't bad enough for us to say it's not tahur anymore. This is what it means, hukman. Change occurred, but that change doesn't stop it from being tahur.
من التغير محددة لا تخرج الماء من الطهور إلى الطاهر. فهذه الأنواع أو هذه التغيرات التي تصيب الماء ولا تخرجه من كونه طهور إلى كونه طاهر، كيف نصف الماء في هذه الحالة؟ نقول هذا ماء باق على خلقته، ما هو باق على خلقته، أصابه تغير، فنقول نعم هو باق على خلقته حكما وليس حقيقة، يعني في حكم الباقي على الخلقة كأنه لم يصبه تغير. وسنأتي على بيان هذه الأنواع من التغيرات التي لا تؤثر في الماء. فهمتوا هذه العبارة؟ طيب انتقل الآن.
Jay, we'll stop at this amount. So he says, so this is what it means to be baqi ala khilqatihi hukman, meaning that some change occurred, but this change hasn't taken it out of being tahur. So what do we call this water that has been changed slightly but this change hasn't taken it out of being, this change isn't too extensive. He said we call this water tahur, right? Because the change that occurred hasn't taken it out of being tahur. Somebody will say, but it changed. It's not the same way it was created. It's not baqi ala khilqati. We say, no, it is baqi ala khilqatihi, lakin hukman. It's still the same way it was created, maybe not in reality, but in the judgment that we give it, it's the same. Right? I want to give you some examples before we close for today. Rainwater. What kind of water is that? Tahur. What kind of tahur? Al-baqi ala khilqatihi hukman aw haqiqatan? Haqiqatan. It's the exact same way it was created. What about a pond, right, that has algae growing in it, and that algae has turned the water green, right? Is this al-baqi ala khilqatihi? Is this water the same way it was created? We say no, water wasn't created green. Water doesn't have a color. But we still say it's tahur. Why? Because it's al-baqi ala khilqatihi hukman, right? And with the judgment we give it. We say, who can stop the algae from growing in the water? We can't stop that. So therefore the water has the same ruling as if nothing changed had occurred. If there's a tree over a pond, and the tree drops leaves into the pond, can we stop the tree from dropping leaves into the pond? We say, no, can't nobody stop that. So it's the same way it was created because we couldn't do nothing about it, right? So this is another example of water that's the same way that it was created, hukman, right? It's not the exact same, but we give it the same water, the same ruling, right? He's going to give us examples of this later. I'm just giving them to you now so when we get there, it'll be clear. In this school of thought, if I take some sea salt and dump it in a cup of water, is that water the same way Allah created it? I took some water out of a pond and put some sea salt in it. Is that water the same way Allah created it? We say, la, you changed it. It wasn't salty, now it's salty. But in this school of thought, we say, no, it's still tahur because it's al-baqi ala khilqatihi hukman. Right? There's another water that's like that, so we say it's okay. I want to say one more time before we're done for the day, this whole issue of water, arihu anfusakum, right? Relax. It's not that hard. I wouldn't say this if it wasn't important, because I usually don't like to go outside of what the Shaykh is teaching us, and his goal is to teach us the book, right? But relax and have knowledge that the issue of water is way simple. Water is two types, tahur and najis, right? Tahur and najis. There's no third type. So if I got salty water, is it najis or tahur? We say it's tahur. If I got muddy water, is it tahur or najis? We say tahur. If I got green water, is it tahur or najis? If the reason it's green is something that's not najis, we say it's tahur, right? Every water is either tahur or najis. But we're learning what the author is teaching us for the sake of understanding the opinions of the scholars. Right? Somebody sees a puddle outside, they say, Akhi, no, you can't make wudu with that water, it's dirty. Right? This is the school of thought of some people. They say, no, Akhi, that water is not the same way it was created. You can't make wudu with that water. So what would you do? You'd make tayammum. If you were in the desert and there was some water that had changed from the way it was created originally, whether in reality or in the ruling, according to this school of thought, what would you do? You will make tayammum. Because the only water that yarfa al-hadath wa yazil al-khabath is what? Tahur. And according to this school of thought, if the water's changed, then it's not tahur. Right? But the correct opinion, what Allah knows best, is that water is only two types, tahur or najis. But I wanted to point that out because of its importance. But other than that, we want to understand what the author is saying. So to recap one last time, at-tahara, what's tahara? رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث. The purposeful removal of hadith, which is a condition that occurs in the body that stops you from praying. Tahara is رفع الحدث ما في معناه, things that are similar, وزوال الخبث, and the going away of khabath or najasa. How many types of water are there? Right? We're going to book. We don't, like, you're right when you said 2, but according to the book, it's 3, right? What's the first one called? What's its name? Tahur. What's its definition? Al-Baqi ala khilqatihi. We got to add 2 words though. Haqiqatan or hukman. It's the water that's the same way it was created, whether in reality or in the judgment given to it. And what does it do? What does tahur water do? Yarfa al-hadith wa yazil al-khabath. It's the only thing that can get rid of the hadith and get rid of najasa. It's the only thing that does both. Right? So that's what we learned today. We'll stop at that amount at minute 37:39. Hada wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Are there any questions about any of that? الطهارة هو رفع الحدث وما في معناه وزوال الخبث. المياه 3 طهور أحدها طهور وهو الباقي على خلقته يرفع الحدث ويزيل الخبث. That's where we stopped at. If there's no questions, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.